In the past, when a government shutdown was being threatened, or when we would briefly actually have a shutdown, the president would attempt to present himself as like a diplomat, negotiating between the two sides, or barring that, like a responsible, like stable steward of the government in some way. Now, Donald Trump is the president, so that was never gonna happen. We've got something else going on. And bear in mind, Donald Trump is not only chaotic and his brain is rotting in his skull, he's also a petty little bitch. And so we're gonna demonstrate that. So just bear in mind, as I show you these recent developments, I'm sure if you're MAGA and you're watching this, you're gonna think this is awesome because you haven't really thought about it. You're gonna think it's awesome because you haven't thought about how many people who think and act and look just like you are being screwed over right now. And you definitely haven't thought about how this might screw you over directly in the future. So let's turn to the development in the shutdown. And that is that Donald Trump is following through on his threats to really screw over the Democrats, Democrat programs, Democrat funding. And you can see there that all of these different like grants have been canceled. The vast majority of them were grants going to Democratic-led districts. And in terms of the actual money, it's almost entirely money that would have been going to Democratic districts. So this is money for energy projects and infrastructure and research grants and all sorts of things like this. Now, bear in mind, all of this is money that was already allocated by Congress. So in a previous era, Congress would be like, hey, dude, it's not actually up to you to just, like we said we want to do this, you have to do it. But now Congress just lays down and let Donald Trump do whatever he wants. And so he's decided, well, I don't want the shutdown and the Democrats are doing the shutdown, so I'm gonna screw over the Democrats. And you can see where it's distributed. Much of that funding apparently was going to either like the Washington area, California, and a lot of it going to New York. And you're gonna see a lot of that if Zoran Mamdani gets in office. He's been swearing that he would do that. And so what do you need to do as president to justify this biased level of decisions about funding? Well, you probably need a pretty nuanced and, I don't know, like well-researched sort of argument, right? Evidently not so. Mr. Trump's aides have offered a series of explanations for the administration's decision to pause or terminate grants, claiming in some cases that the spending would have been wasteful, which again, is not his decision to make. It was allocated by Congress, or that it would be in conflict with the president's priorities. Both of those things just mean I don't like it. That's literally all it means. And that's important going forward. Now, I said that there were a couple of reasons why MAGA perhaps would be like happy about this, laughing about this, but maybe they shouldn't. So first of all, and I guess this is relying on a minor level of empathy that they might still not be able to achieve. So these are grants that have been cut to Democratic-led districts. And do you know what I've found in my research into these Democratic-led districts? It isn't always the case that only Democrats live there. Did you know that? Did you know that like a Democrat could win because they get 60% of the vote? Or 54% of the vote, or 51% of the vote. Did you know that it's possible that there are literally millions upon millions of Republicans, MAGA people living in these districts who have just been effed over by Donald Trump, by the Trump administration? And look, maybe some of them are so dense, so willfully self-destructive that they don't even realize that they might be cheering, they might be tweeting about how awesome this is as their own areas get screwed over. Infrastructure that would benefit them, their families, businesses that they run, businesses that they use, getting screwed over because Donald Trump wanted to feel like, yeah, screw those Democrats, even though it's Republicans being hit with this. And also going forward, we've never seen anything like this before. But we could in the future. I mean, if this is the way Donald Trump wants to play it, and he's saying, I alone decide where the funding goes. Well, he's the president now, but he's not gonna be the president always. And I'm not even saying because he'll be voted out. I know there's a very good chance we'll never have another election as long as he's alive. But I've seen the guy's cankles. I don't think that even that is gonna take all that long. So someday a Democrat could get into office and decide to do this exact same thing. And many Democrats, it's just not in their composition to do this sort of stuff, is it? Like Chuck Schumer, if he was president, is not gonna do this. I don't know about Pritzker, Shapiro. They seem like relatively normal guys. But you know who has shown a petty streak recently? Gavin Newsom has shown that he can be a pretty petty bitch too if he wants to. So if he gets in, maybe Texas has a lot of grants that suddenly don't get funded, because it would be wasteful or it just doesn't align with President Gavin Newsom's priorities. Maybe F off Florida, you can fund yourself. And I know that like empathy on the one hand and like long-term planning on the other are not emotional or psychological strong suits of MAGA. But like maybe stop for just a second, pause in your self-congratulatory chuckling to just think about how this might screw you over in the future. What do you think, Sharon?
I think people just live in the moment, okay? And by the way, I love Pretty Boy Petty. Okay, that's his new nickname, Gavin Newsom, Pretty Boy Petty. But people just live in the moment. They want to celebrate. They want to attack fans of the opposing team who are just let down in a World Series matchup. They don't consider that there will be another game. They don't consider that perhaps a parent or a grandparent will be disappeared, their weed whacker left behind. That's not what they want to do. It doesn't feel good. They want to celebrate and laugh in their neighbor's face. And so that's apparently what they'll do until they start crying. And then Cenk will tell us that we have to welcome everyone because it's a big tent, okay? And we want to welcome these people back into the fold. But hey, in the meantime, everybody can just be petty and do their own thing.
Yeah. And again, look, if we just get some, regular status quo corporate Democrat or whatever, they're not gonna do any of this stuff. They're not gonna do it for the petty reasons, which maybe for some of you that's good. You don't like the pettiness or whatever. You're not as damaged as I have become. But also, like, a lot of this could be used not just for petty reasons. Because Donald Trump is not just canceling grants to these districts, and I'll end in a second. I know we have a lot to get to. He's also, for instance, like he doesn't want the shutdown to hurt him in some ways, like for instance, that soldiers wouldn't be getting paid. So what he decided to do is we're just gonna take money from the military that's for other stuff, and we're gonna put it into pay, which probably is illegal. And the Democrats don't really want to say anything because they don't want to be seen to be, standing against like soldiers getting paid. But like if you can do that, if we're now saying that the president can do literally whatever he wants with money, it doesn't matter what Congress has said, then in the future, a progressive president could do that. You're probably seeing reports that Donald Trump is considering selling student loan debt to private corporations, which not only could result in them putting lots of pressure on those people, screwing with them, whatever, all that stuff, but then also now it can't be canceled in the future because we don't own it anymore. Well, let's say that he doesn't do that. Why doesn't President AOC sell all the student loan debt to me for $1? I'll give her $1. She gives me the student loan debt, and then oopsie doopsie, I cancel it myself. She didn't do it. She sold it. It was an investment, probably a bad one. Oh, tut tut. We could do that too. So there's a lot of stuff that, whether even if you set aside the pettiness that a future president could potentially use. And we'll see. Again, we're still in the early days of this. The shutdown could last for a really long time.